freshly single. I am freshly single. Like a fresh loaf of lonely bread pulled out of the oven of impermanence and placed on the table of boredom. I am so incredibly bad at relationships. At like dating or being in a relationship. I just can't. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I just can't do it. Maybe I'm just one of those incapable, neurotic, troll-like beings who's destined to pad through their empty home in slippers and underwear, eating cat food and listening to old Joni Mitchell albums while they contemplate the fog of confusion that surrounds all truth. I don't know. Never been good at them. They always end. To the point where anytime I get into a relationship with someone or start dating someone, part of me thinks we're going to hate each other one day. It's that bad. I know you're not supposed to think those things and you're supposed to have a positive outlook on it, but it seems like the whole process is fundamentally flawed. I mean, I don't know. Maybe my expectations are too grand for these things. I think that might be what it is. I have these insane expectations when it comes to a relationship, and you shouldn't have any expectations about anything. It should just be like, oh, this person's fun to hang out with, and I'm enjoying my life hanging out with this person. But then what happens when it's not as fun to hang out? What happens when you start like feeling like the initial passionate romance is gone, and then you feel like you're having to force things or make things happen? And that's when you're supposed to get into a responsible relationship. But I don't want that. I think that's the problem. Who wants to experience that, the doldrums, the flat seas, where you're just sort of floating out there on a life raft with this person? It started off as this insane, wonderful, romantic yacht cruise through the sweet ocean of passion and love, with mermaids climbing up on the banks of secret islands singing about the glories of transcendent love. The stars overhead dancing as you and your sweet new lover made passionate love on the deck of your magical ship, pirated by or captained by a romantic skeleton pirate. It sounds scary, but he's awesome. He brings scotch down to your sumptuous room in the ship where you play some mysterious piano instrument made of crystal keys and sing songs of love to your darling, and listen to the waves pound against the side of the ship and think about how you have found a bastion of harmony and safety and comfort in this turbulent universe of disaster and chaos, while all those around you flail miserably through the awful world, lost, their hearts closed down. Somehow this moment of perfect beauty has opened up for you. And all the things that used to seem so boring and dull, all the crappy songs that used to strike you as being mediocre lies spit out by overpaid cocaine addicts who seem to have generated their obvious lyrics on a rudimentary computer from the 1970s, seems like the poetry being sung by angels in heaven. And that's what it's like to be in love. And then something happens. Something inevitably happens. Perhaps it's a realization. Maybe you realize that there's no fucking way that you're going to be able to maintain a relationship when there is a massive age difference between you and the person. Maybe you see that. You just recognize that and you realize oh, this isn't fixable. Neither one of you's bad. It's just, how can you make up for time? This whole thing where older guys date younger girls is a kind of thing. What is that? Is that a good idea? I don't see how that's a good idea. I thought it might be a good idea. Maybe that's the problem. But then you can't really judge someone based on their age on either side of the spectrum, right? You just have to let things be as they are. And if you love someone, you love somebody. So you forget about the whole age thing or whatever. But then cracks start appearing in the windshield of the science fiction utopia that it's not a windshield. This is what it's like. It's like Mars. Think of Mars. Mars, the barren, dead planet. Just one big fucking desert. Nothing. Used to be water there. Used to be possibly super advanced, hyper intelligent, green-skinned shaman-like beings that lived in verdant forests and tamed scorpion creatures that they rode around at festivals that happened every couple of Martian days. Maybe they smoked incredibly powerful Martian vapor that allowed them to see through time and space. Who knows? But now it's just a dead, rotting planet. It's like somebody built on Mars some sort of utopian paradise, a bubble, a glass bubble, terraformed the bubble, returned some tiny little piece of Mars to the former beauty of what Mars was, brought a little piece of Mars back to life. Now you look out that window surrounding the science fiction geranium that you're somehow living in, and all you see is death, red dust, rocks rising up. But inside this little geranium, it's beautiful. Beautiful. The oxygen is so pure and clean, and the Martian pet scorpion creatures are so cute, and everyone's singing, and it's glorious. But then a micrometeorite smashes into the side of that fucking Martian geranium in the form of a realization, A realization pops into your head like, oh my God, there's no fucking way that I'm going to be able to maintain this relationship because our priorities are completely different. Maybe that's what you realize. And then now you've gone into this, now you're in the mode of like, fuck, I'm going to have to pretend that this is working out, and then it isn't, and then, then the fights start happening, and that's another micro meteor, and the next thing you know, the whole fucking thing is falling apart, cracking in, the sacred sweet oxygen blasting out, until finally you realize this is not a place where two people can live together anymore. And that's when the relationship ends, and you're back to square one again. Contemplating the impermanence of everything, having probably lost a really close friend because how do you end a relationship gracefully? How does that happen? I guess it can be done, kind of like the way the Mayans maybe used to sacrifice children. It was probably like a sweet thing. I know that sounds weird, but maybe they figured out a way to make it kind of beautiful and poignant. And, the kid gets fattened up on candied apples and honey and Mayan booze for a year until the kid's super fat and covered in perfume, and then thinks there's a stake at the top of the pyramid, and before he can blink, there's a Mayan dagger cutting his heart out and holding it up to the eclipse or something. Maybe the Mayans knew how to do it, but how do you end a relationship? How does a relationship end in a non-tumultuous, brutal, fiery, sizzler level crap steak? You know what I mean? So there you are, alone in the ruins of this former Martian utopia, looking at the shattered bits of glass that used to protect you from the horrible climate of Mars, breathing in an oxygen tank, seeing all the smashed, cute Martian pet scorpions that somehow made it into this terrible analogy, festering on the soil of Mars. The thing that was once this beautiful, lovely environment is gone, and now you're just sitting there on Mars, alone, staring up at that weird black sky And you realize this is reality. This is the truth. The truth is this: a wasteland, a blasted wasteland. I've got to get used to this. This is what I've got to get used to. And gradually over time, this is in my fantasy, you begin to learn how to live outside of that stupid bullshit geranium that you always construct, where you pretend that you're on some kind of romantic ship floating through an ocean of peace, when in fact you're murking through the darkness that is the darkness that every human being must confront in their lives if they want to actualize themselves. And that's where you want to stay, right there, in that world. Not distracting yourself again with some other bullshit relationship, not getting lost in the hypnotic spell of this thing or that thing, but just realizing that if you really want to terraform Mars, if you want to terraform the Mars of your life, which is the rubble of all the past relationships and everything that went away, if you can't build something made of glass on an alien fucking planet, you've got to figure out how to be alone. That's what I'm trying to say in some weird hippie hemp speak. You got to figure out how to be alone. That's it. Alone. Really alone. Laying back in that cold or super boilingly hot Martian dirt and letting your body get fried and melted and reamalgamated into the soil of the emptiness which you are. Somewhere on the other side of that, I think you can really find some amazing romance, you know. But trying to find romance or love or trying to like make these secret, intimate, special connections with just one person is probably a waste of time anyway. Not a waste of time, but it's a kind of selfish act. Do you ever consider that? Do you ever consider that your obsession with your relationship, your obsession with this one person is in its own right a selfish act? That is in its own way a mistake. One of the great mistakes that we all make, that we all fall prey to. You know, like when you're a kid and you got your security blanket or your pacifier. That kind of thing. It's like maybe the answer is to just be alone. Not in like a depressed way, not alone like you're the elephant man sort of hobbling through the world with a cane and a bag over your head. Maybe alone in the sense of like, I am no longer going to seek relief in any one thing. I'm not going to try to soothe the pain inside of me using nectar that I have extracted from a false impression of another person. Anyway, you've just decided that it's like, what, you don't want to fucking date a walking placebo where you think this is the goddamn answer, and all these songs they sing on the radio trick you into believing that this is one of the main goals. Like, that's the bullseye. They trick you into thinking the fucking bullseye is located in between someone's legs or in their heart or whatever. There's far less vulgar ways to say that. Like that awful song that came out. What was that terrible song that came out a while ago? It was so bad. Oh my God, I'm trying to remember this fucking song. It's about some loon who like comes to somebody's door and tells him that she's happy. It's like, I'm going to find someone like you. I can't remember the name of the song. It's really weird though. Like a loon, the whole song is about this loon who hobbles up to somebody's door after they've gotten married and is like, listen, I'm really happy that you're married, and just so you know, I think I might be able to find someone who's like you out there. It's like a song, it's like a stalker anthem. There's songs like that get shotgunned out of the fucking radio to the point where so many people are just wandering around desperately trying to find some person to be the matching piece of the puzzle. God, how weak is that? Like you're incomplete, you know? Like the idea is you're this incomplete thing and you're trying to find this other thing to complete you. Like you're a Lego and there's some other Lego that will perfectly fit into your Lego. And man, once that great conjunction happens, oh Lordy, here come the angels. But that doesn't happen. You find conjunctions. People are definitely made to fit into each other's holes. There's no question about that. All of life depends on the fact that we fit into each other's holes quite well. But before you put it in somebody else's hole, you need to find your own hole. WHOLE. You need to be a hole. A hole. Not a hole. Because if you're a hole, HOLE, and then you end up becoming obsessed with someone else's HOLE, then all you are is one big HOLE hole, a pit, that's it. A suction, one big black hole. Sucking each other down into some kind of miserable state. It's very sad. God damn it. The thing that sucks about this black hole problem, the thing that sucks about when a relationship implodes on itself is that when you inevitably walk away, there's the potential for walking away a little darker, you know, like that, a little less trusting, a little more confused. I don't know, maybe that's good. Maybe that's good. I wish that there was a magical relationship counselor unicorn that would appear out of a rainbow when things started getting weird and would just sit down with you and your lover. Oh, don't you understand? Here's what he really means to say. This is what she really means. That's all. See, underneath it, it's all just love. That'd be great. But that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. And you know, I've been lucky. I think I've been lucky because I don't have babies. And that, you know, quite often that happens is you find a person, merge together, the merger creates a baby. The baby is a kind of manacle that locks you two together, even though you realize like, oh no, this was just a terrible mistake. That can happen too. That's why the divorce rates are so high. You know, you guys know I'm friends with Christopher Ryan. He wrote this incredible book, Sex at Dawn. Christopher Ryan's the reason the sound's better on this podcast because he gave me an incredible soundboard. And this book, Sex at Dawn, is all about how monogamy doesn't work quite often. I'm a monogamous person. I've never been in an open relationship. And though I often contemplate how I would give it a shot, it never ends up happening because I get jealous, which is so stupid. But, you know, I was talking to a friend and they were like, well, monogamous relationships never work. Or non-monogamous relationships never work. Non-monogamous relationships, open relationships, I've never heard of them working. It's like, I've never heard of a relationship working. None of them when do they ever work? And define work. What does work even mean? Like, in the same way that whenever you start talking about some kind of, I don't know, idea of how you should love yourself and practice mindfulness and meditate and spend your time in disciplined contemplation so that you could become a better person and help someone near and close to you, inevitably somebody will say, yeah, but what about the starving African children? Your meditation won't help them. There's always a starving fucking kid who comes into any kind of subjective solution to the suffering inside of you. You're always supposed to be worrying over this starving kid or Fukushima or some thing out there. In the same way, there's in our minds is the myth, this Bigfoot legend of this elderly couple that's been married for 30 years and have never had a single fight in their entire lives. And they bake each other bread, and they go out and sit in the yard and sip tea and stare at the garden that they've cultivated together for years. And their grandchildren come and they give the grandchildren little mints, and the grandchildren dance around them and sing beautiful hymns about how wonderful life is and how happy they are that these two elderly people copulated back in the 40s and popped out two more people who copulated and blasted out these little kids who are this kind of wave of happiness rolling through time, of which this elderly paradise couple is a part. It's fucking Sasquatch, man. Where is this elderly couple? I want to interview them for the goddamn podcast, and then after the podcast, I'm going to strangle them. They don't exist. They don't exist. I think it's a myth. There's no fucking goddamn Titanic. You don't end up in the afterlife. You don't end up in the goddamn afterlife in some magic boat, a child again. That doesn't happen. We're being misdirected here. I'm not saying that you can't be happy with a person, or you can't find someone who is right for you, or someone that you can connect with, but you can't fucking connect with somebody if you haven't transformed yourself from a whole to a whole. And I don't know many people who've done that. And most of the people who have done that don't seem to really care about being in a relationship. It's a paradox. It's like eating, you know how they say that you should eat before you go to the grocery store so you're not hungry at the grocery store? So if you eat before you go to the grocery store, it makes grocery shopping much less exciting because you're not really hungry, and then all this shit that you end up buying when you're hungry and stoned at the grocery store, it doesn't make its way into the cart. You'll just end up with some kale and grapes or something. A couple of oranges, as opposed to 5 bags of cashews, some 16 kombuchas, a overload of bananas, 2 rotisserie chickens, some kind of weird sushi to-go plate, soups. You'll just end up with some kale and saltless saltines. That's what it's like. I mean, if you go into a relationship with this kind of famine mentality, or I don't know, this kind of just sucking hole inside of you, then yeah, it's great at first, because in the same way it's great when a heroin addict finally manages to get a hypodermic needle filled with some new juice blasted into their oozing sore on their fucking arm. It's great. It's the hunger. The hunger amplifies the sense of... The hunger is what paradoxically creates the pleasure of eating. But this is a cycle that only ends up in more hunger. So I don't know. I'm single. Now. That's it. That's it for me. I'm cashing in my Bitcoins.